Good afternoon, everyone on YouTube. I'm back with another video, and today I wanted to talk about gentrification. Um, Gentrification is something that I think a lot of people don't understand what it is, and how it's affecting middle class, or like lower to middle class, mainly lower class, but lower to middle class urban areas. Like urban inner cities. So um, basically, what gentrification is like. Um, so like let's take like a little part of the city that's completely run, that used to be so run down. A lot of taxes, a lot of money wasn't invested in it, taxes weren't invested in it at all, so it's just this completely run down place. Well, they decide to do what's called an urban revitalization. Build it up, um, make it make it to where people can live in, but jack up the prices, right? So then you have these more affluent people that come into the inner cities, and the people, the people who were there who could afford it, because they jack the prices so high, they get kicked out. And that's basically what gentrification is. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail of what that entails. So I did a little research. So I'm going to try to spit out some numbers really quick. So let me give you an example. I actually found this off of governing data. I'm going to find a link eventually, and I'll put it down below. So basically, it's saying that, from what I'm telling you, it's a new class of more affluent residents moving into a once underinvested and predominantly poor communities. Development is followed, typically accompanied by sharp increases in housing prices that can displace the neighborhood's longtime residents. And that's where the big thing comes from, is displacement. And it's almost it's the exact opposite. I don't know if you've heard of white flight, but so white flight is when, I would say back in the 60s or 70s, actually no, 70s, when suburban life became like a boom, you know what I mean? When blacks actually started moving into more suburban areas, white people started to leave, because as blacks moved in, the housing market and the value went down. So whites started to leave, and for where I live in particular, the further out west is where majority of the nicer places are, where most of the white people are. So the more affluent people are out west, and that's basically what happens with this. But it's the exact opposite, where people are coming in, more affluent people are coming into these newly renovated places in the city, because I guess within the last 10 years or so, there's been a change in from suburban life to city life. And so of course, landlords are taking advantage of this, and jacking up the prices, renovating, jacking up the prices, and then the people who were there, who've maybe been there for like decades, are gone. So gentrification greatly accelerated in several cities. Nearly 20% of neighborhoods with lower income and home values have experienced gentrification since 2000, compared to only 9% during the 1990s. Gentrification still remains rare nationally, with only 8% of all neighborhoods reviewed experiencing gentrification since the 2000 census. One of the best places to look at would be, let's see, hold on. Compared to lower income areas that fail to gentrify, gentrifying census tracts recorded increases in the non-Hispanic white population, and declines in the poverty rate, which is true, because you're having a lot of crime that's being gone. I'm going to turn this on really quick. Sorry if it. Okay, this is probably better. So yeah, so you're having, obviously you're going to have lower crime, because studies have been done to show that the more impoverished a family or a group of people are, the more they turn to crime to try to survive. So you're getting these affluent people who are coming in. Obviously, crime is going to go down because there's less poverty, which, I mean, correlation doesn't always equal causation, but it makes complete sense. So, in looking at that, I wanted to use an example for like, I wanted to talk about African Americans and how it's really affecting them, really affecting them. So neighborhoods gentrifying since 2000, since it's actually starting to be recorded. Since 2000, recorded population increases and became wider. Listen to that, became wider. With the share of non-Hispanic white residents increasing an average of 4.3% percentage points. Meanwhile, lower income neighborhoods that failed to gentrify experienced slight population losses and saw the concentration of minorities increase. They've also experienced different economic fates. For example, average poverty rates climbed nearly 7% in already lower income tracts that didn't gentrify, while dropping slightly in gentrifying neighborhoods. So take, for example, the main example that whenever someone says gentrification, it's always two places, right? San Francisco and New York. The reason why people say San Francisco first is because San Francisco has been doing this change since the 70s. So they've been trying to increase their property value and have more people come in for so long that by the time this particular article began to track the data, they didn't even have any data because everything was already done. You know what I mean? So just to give you an example of what's the population change in San Francisco, right? African Americans in San Francisco from 1970 to 2010, the population of African Americans decreased to less than 49,000 people. That's more of a 50% decrease within the those last years, and with an average migration being 10% per year. Because you're having people, because like, so the African Americans who were there, I wanted to say they accounted for, I think, 10% of the population, I believe. I'm not too sure. I'm gonna look that up just for my curiosity. But I think they accounted for 10%, and now they're down to 3% of the population. But I believe they account for almost 80% of the prison population. It's just getting to a point where a lot of people can't, like, people who live there can't afford it. And I can even vouch for myself, because where I live now, so I moved here to this particular place. I moved here August of 2015. So I've been here almost relatively 2 years. The place there's a place that I usually go, or I used to go. It was a little bit further out, and I used to call it the ghetto because that's what it was. Like, houses were run down, all this shit was going. Now they've built, like, these houses are nice. Like, they have like condos, they have houses, like they're revitalizing this whole thing. But the people who used to live there, they moved them out. They don't live there anymore. Like, not even kicked them out. They don't live there anymore. You know what I mean? Like, there are places where these new houses are, I can't even afford to live. There's no way I can afford to live there. So, I mean, it's getting to a point where it's like the people who have lived there, say 20 or 30 years, you know what I mean? Their city has changed so much, the culture has changed so much, and it's becoming wider. like, let's just get that out of the way. It's becoming wider. It's becoming more white people being in the city, and since they have the money, the surrounding areas can jack up their prices. And that's basically what gentrification is and why it's there. I see it as problematic because from what I've seen, there haven't been any kind of regulations or any kind of limitations as to what landlords or anyone can do. You know what I mean? Like, there should be some kind of regulation saying you can only increase the price by this much. And I'm sure that's state by state, but still, you could only increase the price this much. You have to give the tenant like so many times to hours to stay there, or it's like days to stay there, like there needs to be more of a regulation between when you could kick someone out. Because I was actually watching a documentary where about gentrification in New York, which has been hit pretty hard too. Like, a lot of the people who live there, a like in these particular places that they don't even recognize where they are anymore, because it's completely, everything's like sky rises and, you know, nice places and all these new places, and it's like they don't recognize that, and they can't afford it anyway, you know what I mean? So like, I can see there are arguments, and I can definitely see both sides of the argument. A lot of people will say that gentrification will revitalize the city, will make it better, will bring in more businesses, will bring in more income. And you can't argue that logic, because that's true. It's been seen. Just with San Francisco alone, you can see that's true. But when you're looking at the other side of the argument, you're displacing people. People have nowhere to go. People are having, like, black people are having to leave San Francisco. They're having to leave California because it's just getting to a point where they just can't afford it. And so, you know, it's like, it's economics versus humanity. You know what I mean? It's like, do you care about displacing this family when you know you're going to make more money? And that's basically what it is. Like, they use the lower crime rate and the lower poverty rates as an advantage, and it is. But when you have people who can't even afford to be where they used to live for years and years and years, you know what I mean? Like, that's, I don't know. There's nothing, that's kind of inhumane, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just an idealist. So anyway, leave your comments down below. Let me know what you've seen. If you've seen it in your neighborhood. It's definitely starting to become, like, ever since 2000, it's definitely starting to become more of a thing. Urban revitalization is. So let me know if you see anything wherever you're located. Let me know if you see anything in the comments, because it's just because I'm so stuck in where I am, I don't know how largely it's affected America. So leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hope this has provided some kind of insight that that you may not have thought about. Anyway, talk to you guys later. Peace.